Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, our guests are Christian Williams and Brian Trehearne. And without further ado, I will give you a bit of their bios so that you can learn a little bit more about them. If you just give me a moment. If you wish to leave some comments in the chat box on the side, you're more than welcome, leaving comments or leaving questions. And we'll also leave our coordinates as to getting our Facebook page and a YouTube channel so that you can see these readings a little later on if you missed today. So today, our guest, Brian Trehearne, has taught poetry, creative writing, and Canadian literature at McGill University for more than 30 years. He has published several books and articles on Canadian modernist poetry, including an edition of the poems of Eastern Townships poet John Glasgow. He has also taught the writing of Leonard Cohen for 20 years. His anthology, Canadian Poetry 1920 to 1960, appeared with McClellan and Stewart in 2010. A lifelong poet, his own poetry has appeared in the UK periodicals Candelabrum and Envoy. 20 years at the cottage on Echo Lake in Vermont brought him close to the border landscapes surrounding the Centre des Arts at Stanstead. Since a very young age, Christian Williams has never stopped being fully engaged in poetry. He was influenced by meeting Irving Layton in Montreal, where he gave a public poetry reading and went on to study creative writing and visual arts at Concordia and McGill Universities. His work appeared in a number of anthologies over the years, including Moments of the Soul out of Washington, D.C. He taught art at Stanstead College for 27 years and was renowned for his poetry readings. Upon his retirement from the college this past year, the wing in which he taught was named after him. He has also a number of exhibitions as a visual artist, and he keeps up-to-date publications on his website, cwilliamsart.com, for anyone wishing to read his work. And without further ado, our first guest today is Christian Williams.
Hello. I'd first like to thank Sonia, Patenaude, and Gabriel, Safdie, and Luce, Couture for all the background work and all the work they've done to make this a great event. So I'd like to start with a poem that I wrote nearly 50 years ago in 1971. It relates to the influence of my father, who was a record producer, and inspired me to become interested in poetry and perhaps even lyrics. He even showed me how to copyright my work at that time. So the first one that I considered a serious poem many years ago relates to a second poem I wrote when my father was dying in 2013. And it was actually written in the hospital room while he was in his very last days of life. They're both called The Old Man, with the same structure. So I thought it was a good idea to start with that first poem of a 10-year-old boy and then relate it to the second poem and the person who influenced me to write throughout my whole life. The remainder of the readings will be my most recent work. The Old Man. The old man on the dirty street, leaning on the wall, eating nothing, doing nothing, just drinking alcohol. The bottle in his left hand, the cup is in his right, and all he does is lean there through the day and through the night. The people that walk by give him a funny stare, but the old man on the dirty street doesn't seem to care. Then the old man on the dirty street with his bottle and his cup fell asleep beside the wall one day and never did wake up. The old man. The old man lays there back to back on a hydraulic bed with buttons. He stares out the window long and hard. He sees greediness and gluttons. The clock is frozen. Time has passed. He is hurled into the now. His gray beard a story of 10,000 pages, yet he can barely raise his brow. He feels his pulse with watery eyes. In his hand are polished stones. The flowers in the room are stilled by the creaking of his bones. The old man whispers in my tender ears and to any passers-by, that he wishes there were just a chance to have a second try. The next one is a sonnet called Prayer to a Cloud. For lack of a better word named heaven, that resides just below these drowsy feet, and the ground puffed up like muddy leaven rises up in curved mounds for us to greet. Earth, metal, fire, and wood, the elements supposedly that made us what we are, brought together in special arrangement by delicate ether married with tar. Who knows exactly what I believe in if I can't see 1 foot ahead of me? Golden coins that flipped and odds were even, that they land near some forsaken fruit tree. Is this the moment names are called out loud and I recite a prayer to a cloud? Ears to listen. At that very moment of letting go, there was a faint sound of acorns falling, thumping on moss-covered ground in random places. At that very moment of letting go, there was a faint sound of breath escaping into the night air as a sleepy chest sunk into the unknown. At that very moment of letting go, there was a faint drone sound of a vacuum cleaner, then the strangest silence that came afterwards, gifts from the sky. At that moment, surrender seemed as if inevitable. Could that moment be this moment? The part in the dream where I wake up? Birthdays in August. When lions are born, to call them big cats is such a simplistic name for complicated apex creatures. In the month of August, according to the zodiac, lions are born. They may walk among us slowly, carefully, precisely, while children play with stuffed toy lions and tigers. In the year of the tiger, in the month of the lion, with wild imaginations. They may even grow up to the ripe age of 80 or so. What is power and beauty, if not to walk across the globe, fully present and alert, and with each confident step to know another step will follow, even better than the first. The color of ashes. Repeated memories burned a hole through a dusty green dream catcher, of holding hands, of looking out windows, of seeing 1,000 paintings of spring disappear little by little into dried leaves, into tilled ground, into fires that just went out, into ashes that have forgotten about their true colors. The chains are rusted. Near a frozen, cold window where crisp winds blow all night, near the toaster and the frying pan is someone I do not know, who woke up, got ready to leave the house on some kind of wheels, thinking intensely of everything, anything, and nothing in particular. Close by was the punch, the gray clock, and the burning fire where metals were forged and chains built all day long. Each link shared a similar destination, as if forever holding hands, not letting go until the chains rusted through, dropping to the ground, and allowed this gate to swing open. As I remember it, I walked through and felt such freedom, not thinking of people who made such things, not knowing what was next, seeing the horizon for the first time. The flight of birds. No cloud formations, no picture stories. It was calm as calm can be. I saw no ghosts, yet eerie silence had taken over me. Out of nowhere, magic hats beheld a single deer at peace. As I blinked, then looked the other way, it became a flock of geese. Though shapes may shift in magic shows, on playgrounds in these fields, I realized my eyes were closed before secrets they revealed. Vision is a funny thing, since creatures, the ones not often seen, appear just like fresh thoughts shown here, yet always here have been. Polished pebbles. Should we appeal to the tiniest of particles? Pray for hearts not beating? Bow down to shimmering afterglows? Listen closely for smallest vibrations? Or stand still, wait, for polished pebbles and the whole rushing river to smash into this ocean of silence? Waves. Waves of air, tidal waves, disappear in sand. Radar waves, sonar waves, desert waves on land. Microwaves, heat to boil, coldest Arctic ice. Trending waves, magnetic waves, waves that wave precise. Second waves, pandemic waves, throw a sucker punch. Hit their mark, grit their teeth, then listen for the crunch. Oscillating back and forth, waves fill up the sky. But heaviest waves of all the waves are waves that wave goodbye. And finally, melancholy flying. Did we arrive here by broom, tornadoes, or fantasy sleigh rides? As far as anyone can see, we are looking down from above at tiny broken squares, splinters, and twinkling city lights. Eventually, nature will teach us how to turn our elegant junkyards into English gardens. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those of you who have joined us in the last few minutes. My name is Sonia, and I will be your host and moderator today. We've just heard Christian Williams. I've put the coordinates of his website in the chat, group chat app on the side. If you feel like making any comments or sharing questions, I invite you to do so in that chat box on the side. And if you're ready, Brian, please take it away.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for organizing the event for us. It's been very helpful. And thank you to my absent friend, Gabriel, who should be here to hear this. I'm very grateful to him for launching this series, of course, in general, but especially for inviting me to join the august company. And Christian, thanks for those poems. Delightful to hear those rhymes. I'm going to read a few poems to begin that are set in landscapes that should be familiar to those of you in or near Stanstead, though I was at the time on the wrong side of the international border. Walking with Give. That's the city sound of it, the dumb foot treading downward, flat as your arches, the soles smack against the trottoir, and then the next steps clap and on into the kind of eternity you asked for, you with your proud gift for walking. You've done it for years, even here, hard pricked by these hot stones as you steal up from the shingle where you've beached the kayak for a quick pee. Johnny's on the spot, across the gravel road of the access, and you've gritted your teeth and set off like Samuel Hearne, except tender and naked souls seeking the ashes in this summer bed of coals. But on this day, the gravity's less, or the bitter stones and man have at last agreed on a mutual prayer. Whether it's age, wisdom, whether it's weakness, now You seem to have learned to walk with a better give, your footprints shallower, toes more diffident, generous with the contours of your path. Not yet without pain, just something pliant, tree-like now in your skinny limbs, the wind in you, beginning to drift the earth in the same way. Wasp Trouble. They were still there in the morning, doped with the chill of the night and stunned now by the sudden sun that flooded the window screen. We'd had wasp trouble since we opened, fat ones in the early spring, their newspapery nest hidden somewhere in our rafters. 3 or 4 I'd trapped in a glass, lidded it over and carried outside, their anger electric in that prison. Imagine drinking it down. I tired of that game. Yesterday afternoon, I opened a window for the lake air. Returning later, I saw them, incautious, walking across the screen and slammed the window shut. They puzzled, vibrant, an hour or two between the pane of glass and the open mesh that held them inside, outside, scenting and feeling every light of that evening but their freedom. Starving too, I imagine. Or perhaps like sharks of the small air, dying, denied all motion. Dying, that much was plain. They legged their feelers and ambled slowly. One tried to sting the glass, leaving a drop of poison. The open question was whether I could leave the 3 as long as it took. The next night was to be warmer. They had a last year's fly or 2 between them. I had my work to do, which kept me near them most of that morning. I began to know them. Water lines. I came to nature after my conviction and learned patience. Conviction here is patience. The gift of outlasting, the felt fact of being no other can destroy. Let mankind take all trees, divert all rivers, do this sun-capped lake to death with algae, drought, puncture each green vertebra of Vermont's spine with a line of windmills facing the sunset, raise a dozen waterfront mansions to drain each aquifer, or still these waves under the ash drift of a nuclear winter. Their patience is too great for man's undoing. He has only been destructive in his fashion for 40,000 years, and the verse of those hills mastered its rhythm long, and long before he learned his bitterness in exile. They will persist in their song and know it. So it is to know one's virtue and one's calling, and to voice these in ephemera, lake rippling westward, flight of goldfinch, sonic and precise, birches swaying on a steep slope, a man awaiting words. Old trees. Learn toughness. You need to be cooked dry and still walking. You need to take a little cancer and still put out apples. You need to take a little noise in the heat of the day and drag the old dog up the late summer hill past the broken orchard that no one sprays. You need to bite that apple. You need to grow that rind. You need to eat that worm. The note turns a little darker, and perhaps I should say that the third poem from this point may be distressing for those with a relation to the nightmare of Yemen today. Summer of Mars. O wrathful God, draw near. Show me the light of blood, thy membrane lit from behind, pulsing with purple storms and capped by a stain of ice. Cast your disdain here on the green of the earth. Find me among the shepherds, loutish and pastoral, and raise my hand, O Mars, high overhead in a fist of splenetic light. I have not wanted your name on my lips, but now, when my body is vital and old, and the skin has begun to sing and sag in the rising wind, I call you to enthuse me and my pacifist kind with the glint of weaponry and the gleam of separate bloods. Father Apollo, whose hand is the motherwork of harmony in which all planets weave, admit you have moved it so that Mars draw closer to Earth this season than it has hewn in 60,000 years. Before the gallant Neanderthal knew how to lift his head and release your grip on my tongue. For one good season of war, give over the bodily rhythm I've offered you all these years to the drum cry and the fallen hymn to those who will die. These last two are very recent. Virus song. The streets are quiet as I love them because many are dying, and because in fear of that rising wave we have closed ourselves in our homes and shuttered businesses, and love has constrained itself to one per household. The pathos of abandoned cafes is like lymph nodes that have failed against loneliness. There's nowhere to drive to, not even the synagogue down the street. So the daily ritual chanting of Hasidic men, my neighbors in tens outside their homes, has replaced the warning coos of truck reversals and sonic droppings of jets and the dirty tinnitus of traffic. So deep in the background it goes unheard like Cohen's crickets, or my pulse until it pauses in sudden silence. A little sideways glance at death for us all, the empty world, and at dawn too. Double paralysis, peace for work, because many are dying. And the last one in this set. Yemen. Nothing can be done for the starving child. Her father, young and handsome, surely to the local women, says, the world has forgotten us. He strokes her hanked hair, puts grains of sugar on her lips. There is no other food. Her rib cage is a swelling tent whose size is constrained only by her papery skin. Her eyes deepen as the fine skull pushes out of her head to set them off. She chants some phoneme of her suffering, looks away to a fixed point over his shoulder. The sugar sticks to her lips as if she had no tongue. Stop now, child. If you have drawn well and delivered her horror better than the news did at 6 o'clock, you have also taken a poem from her. Just as you will eat your spoken meal tonight, you will rise from this desk feeling nourished and virtuous. You may also send money her father will never see. Admit that you'll publish in spite of all this knowledge. You saw what you saw, and she can't now be taken from your eyes. Just stop. The child, by the way, is already dead. You've changed nothing, given nothing, seen nothing, written nothing. Breathe your last, sweet one. Release your father. For you, there is no hope. Around you are thousands the cameras didn't show. He will live with you forever, the polite young man. His is the dignity of your death. We are all imposters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Shall I begin?
Ready? Yes, please do.
Endless mile. While we were looking for better choices, deciding which roads to take and what path to make our first step, while we were figuring out which items would serve us and what we could jam into a 50-pound case, while we were fleeing the moment and looking ahead at infinite possibilities of what came next on tight agendas, while we waited impatiently to see what method of transit was ideal for our compulsion to arrive faster. When at the beginning of that 1 mile journey, we began to notice another mile, waiting for us, waiting to tell us, waiting to make it known that below our feet was a conveyor belt on an endless running machine with a secretly hidden off switch. Masquerade. Day 1. Veils worn thin at this crowning ball. Everyone dances with covered faces at parks, hospitals, and indoor places. Day 2. Eyes wide open in global masquerade. Everyone takes chances, comes home to Zoom, tells their story in the other room. Day 3. One would believe this day is done. Everyone in trances as they waltz to schools or empty halls on a ship of fools. Day D. Some boarded planes, flight vid-19. Everyone giving second glances. With baggage overhead, carry on till we go to bed. Today, veils worn thin at this crowning ball. Everyone dances with covered faces in the most remote, uncanny places. Hardly remembered meandering dirt path buried in childhood trees with flat stones stepping across a brook. Turned into an 8-lane highway and a monstrous bridge, both driving a wedge into the heart of what once was a tiny village. Nothing compared to my standing in the middle of the road, compelling a choice to walk directly ahead or turn straight back. Feeling the air of a butterfly land on my outstretched fingers, that was just a second ago, moving in all directions, free as a bird. Sheet of paper. A sheet of paper was scooped up by the wind, and everyone ran to catch it. No matter, it was an unwritten page in an unwritten book. It blew and landed near a picnic table, scratched up and carved with anonymous messages of last-ditch hopes that wouldn't matter but for anyone sitting here to read them. A sheet of paper was crumpled into a ball and thrown to the wind for no one to catch it. No matter, it was an unwritten page in an unwritten diary. It rolled and stopped beside a foot under the picnic table, carved with beat-up Swiss knives, messages of love that could only matter to someone sitting there, alone and hungry. Higgins Beach, 1965. Time-worn memories are washed to shore of starfish lined up on a rail. Sunshine warms the ripply beach, seashells hidden in a drawer. Wave goodbye to rocks and toys, sitting quietly on sandy porch. Plastic seats and giant glass, the car's rear door and 2 young boys. Roll away and lift the dust, billowing in the old rear mirror. Innocent little smiles changed, just so slightly as they must. Early morning and all week long, imagination shaped those sands. The sounds of laughing, distant waves. Return to me, now twice as strong. VENEER. While polishing a glass mirror, she looked up in reverie, out through a delicately thin window at mountains, hills, a valley. Reflections of her youth vanished into thin air, while polishing in circular motions until the glass squeaked, polishing glass with wrinkled hands in large circles with large knuckles. She was our grandmother, lost in reverie. A light breath felt by the glass reflected her piercing watery eyes, slowly etching, engraving her days, her trials, her losses, till the glass looked wrinkled and her wrinkled skin seemed smooth. 20-year plaque. These bricks of red and weather-worn, names carved in each of them, serving a purpose for which they're born, through peace, through wars, and way back when. These bricks were built of humble walls, doors were opened, a stage was set. An orchestra footsteps tread down these halls. Red bricks were outside, getting wet. The work of bricks is hardly done, building windows of the soul, where light of knowledge hard fought and won. Like transparent gems, some truths were told. The greatest stallion was once a foal, not yet jumping over bricks of red, drinking nectars from a simple bowl. Health and wisdom lay ahead. 20 years is a drop of water, trickling down a piece of glass, the mirror of all the sons and daughters, and through these halls of bricks I pass. The track. It is being what it is, a black, unlovely crow, sitting on a treetop, cawing in the morning, sharing what it knows. Down it goes, its pure line of flight sent me a message. We are both here and gone, like those footprints in the snow. Mind field. When sand falls between my fingers, grasping at air, when staring out through a cracked window, when holding a hand too frail to hold, when salt water is measured by the drop from this proud chin, when driving through heavy rain in a silent chamber but for thump of wipers, when looking directly at the tree that caused this splinter, when walking away from the single cloud haunting my vision, when looking up, getting no glimpse of God, when hiking shoes pinch to remind me of tender blisters, when there is no mirror, a portrait is reflected back, when conversations fill my head, choose to stay, when I am not who I was. And finally, Matryoshka, Russian doll. Painted lips, wooden face, standing straight with rounded grace. Smooth-laved heart, another you. Inside your shells, no sign of glue. Can you speak? I think not. After all, this is your lot. You have 6 lives, the 7th one is deep within when come undone. Matryoshka, please don't move. Fragmented thoughts will not approve. Look at me, straight at my head, that I may see what you most dread. I saw you drank from streams of sorrow, yesterday, today, tomorrow. Standing there as still as glass, though you are wooden, thoughts have passed. Your history is rich and deep with other dolls who climbed the heap. To get to here, to look from high, never had to wave goodbye. The 1,000 miles you have traveled, yet not once became unraveled, with lacquered smile on birch tree face, not one hair is out of place. Your outer cover, in plain sight, hides other husks as dark as night. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Christian. I don't know how you feel out there, but I feel so privileged to be able to witness to these readings and to have the opportunity and great pleasure of hearing people read to us. And last but not least, Brian's going to do one last segment for us. Brian, are you ready?
Thank you, Sonia. Christian, thank you. I can hear Irving Layton in some of those lines, so it doesn't surprise me at all to hear of your kinship with him, which we share. So the next few poems have to do with a figurative father and mother and my literal father and mother. For the first one, please imagine you're hearing Socrates speaking in Hades. The most terrifying of all the gods is character. There is no fate here. Your ghost is your essential nature, and all its postures now are fled with the body that housed them. Here you will face eternity with your true soul, and it is not gazing forward into stars. The infinity of hell is retrospect, each peevish gesture relived without the complacency flesh always granted me. Seeing myself now as a character I chose, there are no minor decisions. The great are always those who feel unutterable power over their own beings. That folly's name is genius. What we endure in life is the precise fruition of our real wills, the selves we cannot know, till death, the bystander, makes our business plain. I hope some of you know the astonishing American poet Louise Gluck. This is one of a series of letters I wrote to her in verse. Because you say the names of the Greek gods as others say headache, infidelity, and know them as some know shortness of breath, the spastic grip at the chest, and know yourself too the fates' plaything, their little thread briefly entangled, gods to be spoken to casually or with an intense pleading, like the memory of a remote friend now grown bitter, or the ghosts of your sister, mother, younger, or anguish when your father appears in shade at the foot of the garden in the stiff linen suit and absurd Panama he wore at the seaside when you broke from his adoration. He doesn't know he is dead, merely stretches out his arms, shaking his head, rueful, and then not disappears, but agrees, smiling, with the emptiness of the garden. His pale lapel flower is now one hanging rose, and you have no weapon against the force of this last god, so you write him terse prayers beginning, always hidden in the margins, poem after poem. Oh, time. To my literal father and his brother. Man to man. They are all gone, and their sisters survive. Those 4 boys of the tall clapboard house on Pleasant Valley Road and the sepia light of the 20s. The loss is of a world, boys' goods, the books of my father, his body least among those grown men. Caroming clouds cooling the Okanagan like an ember as he dropped headfirst into the lake and broke his frame slightly, but for long. Where then was the coral island, the litheness of Tarzan, as he lay sore and peevish, while Frank and Jim rode into cattle herds, older daily, as his mind grew beyond the valley and he first turned his pen. What pivoting of limbs, shock of lake-soaked hair, what dogs adopted among them now are forgotten, as all first loves lie quiet and ashamed in the boy's back mind, and the man regrets them. There is my uncle, as I will never know him, dead now, the last of them, the reason of his being no longer apparent, his gentleness surviving, and I in him imagining my father as he was, incipient boy, not yet ready to anger, and his hopes as soft as his brother's smile. That lineage of lineament erased, and nowhere now ghosts of expression visible, whose cousins were my father's lips and eyes, instantly before he struck, with hands outspread, the cloud reflecting water, and was made a man, discomfort, limitation, and gave a son a world. Ghost of my mother. You might have been she, with your good tweed coat in a cranberry twill, the thin tartan lines turquoise and blue, buttoned tight to your throat at a robin's egg scarf, and your knotted kerchief wimpling the fragile skin at your temples, where curls of permed gray hair blew back in the damp wind at my shoulders, a wind you took head on with your cheerful shoulders squared. Your sparrow's frame, that was my mother's, always unglad to be held in a strong son's arms away from the weather, but now unresisting the willful embrace of the dead by the living. Your blue rubber boots were poor. Your sharp eyes smiled frankly across the wind at the utter stranger, their candor exactly hers, and her generation's ease with others, casually passing, trusting, clipped, as the war had taught them. My mother's world walking toward me, spry, and I, her son, busy that day, did not even see you until we were close to passing. In those sudden eyes at mine and their confident kindness and confidence I, young man, would smile in return, I chose my shame the instant I'd hurried past you. Am I wrong to think still, that your smile suddenly stiffened with the blue of your ancient irises when you knew, dear mother, I hadn't even noticed you walked alive on this earth and had paused to bless me with the clear wind of your fading earnest goodness, I who had not yet mourned my mother's passing. Leaf raking. While the black dog frisks the piles I've stitched into the cool lawn, and her breath shows white like soft hair, the century-deep maple pursues its dissolution, the leaves keeping falling over my page. I show much discipline, erase and rework a further hour the bareness of the grass until the breeze slenders, and holding its breath, the old tree honors my afternoon of skill. So we go in, the dog drinks long, I listen for messages, stare out at the lawn. The leaves describing spirals and slaloms down the hard air are general again on my work of grass, and Nell goes out happy to play in their margins. She heeds the different calls of pleasure. And now I have written my life out of that green page, accept the detritus of the season better than the perfect silence I tended. Apology. I gave you flowers. I wrote a poem. The dog was in the poem. The dog was in the flowers. I showed the dog the grass and told her, stay out of the poem. I gave the dog flowers. The dog wrote a poem across your flowers. Domesticity Sonnets. This is number 5 in a sequence. For whom do I dig, pull roots, injure my back each spring in the struggle with this choking earth, so I can sting it later with a few flats of annuals, too unvarious in color, too straining for the sun? What's the good of impatience but love of shade? Why fill the dead corners with shrubs that may or may not thrive, hose every second day against smog and dust, knuckle down into earth against glass, weeds, seeds, and squirrels? Imagine the garden I imagine here, and it's absurd, in this 40 by 15 foot plot chalk against the tough, dark alley. It's a luxuriant lawn overhung with fruit trees, swaying delphiniums, mirroring pillared stars overhead, the sweet, deep loam of the beds undulating with our breathing as we turn and lie in love. And finally, halfway ourselves. The shyness in our eyes when we call this happiness, by its name, incredulity even. We spent so long in a mutual, unspoken forecast of heavy weather that when pale sun broke out through western leaning cloud, we looked away from one another, standing in that light. We've stood together on so many headlands, gazing at the same outward heaving seas and the same rocks below. We know how many fall. We've fallen halfway ourselves, but gravity is not our God. So we hung there side by side, and then the thermal wind wafted us upward gently into one another's arms. I said something poetic. I have to stop doing that. The line was already in your head. Utterance only made its touching literal. You've forgiven me so many times. What was it I was thinking I too had to forgive? The truth be told, it's not always clear or still air enough to hear your voice, though I see you pleading, never pointing. The laughter comes so easily now, smiles and interlocking eyes less often than the sun would wish, that blesses us and blinds us, though our hands grope in the space between us like animals in their burrows and other lairs, finding in scent and warmth alone the windless touch of marriage. Thank you.
Thank you, both Brian and Christian. It was a wonderful hour spent with you. I would now invite Gabriel Safdie to address you. A few words.
Well, I'm sorry to be coming in at this time. I was hoping to welcome you this afternoon. Today's reading meant a great deal to me. I was very eager to hear these two poets read, our two fine poets, Brian Trehearne and Christian Williams, and so I welcome you, and belatedly, but also the rest of you. And I wish to invite you to continue with this with our readings in the coming weeks, and this will be indefinite. I hope that you will be able to come and to hear our readings on the 24th of October, when we have Ray-Marie Taylor and Rachel McCrum. En français, on aura Denise Deshôtels et Marc-André Bruyette le 14 novembre. Anyhow, I'm very happy that there's been increasing enthusiasm, and even the CBC interviewed Sonia and myself yesterday. We have interest shown in various ways. A number of poets seem to be reaching out to participate and be included. So I encourage you all to pass the word around and let people know about this series that seems to be taking off so nicely. I look forward to seeing more of you. Take care and all the best. Thank you. Hello?
Thank you very much, Gabriel. To all of you, thanks a lot for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. It's every week, it seems to reach more people. So please invite your colleagues, your friends, your family. And as Gabriel announced, our next reading is going to be on October 24th with Rachel McCrum and Ray-Marie Taylor. And so it will be really, really wonderful to reach you then. So have a great afternoon. In a few weeks, I'll be able to put today's reading on the YouTube channel, and we hope to catch you very soon.